What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, I did want to start and say we've had a lot of new watchers and listeners. We appreciate you watching and listening to our podcast. Be sure if you're on YouTube, hit that like button. It helps us out. Hit that subscribe button, whether you're on, or follow button if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Daniel, the latest version. Welcome. That's right. The latest version of the college football playoff rankings were released tonight. And I know that our philosophy is it doesn't matter until the end, but let's talk about it. I think you and I both had the same thing. We both thought they were going to do Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee. And that was what you have picked. I would have just swapped Michigan and Ohio State. So it is Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU this week. Tennessee is at 5, Oregon at 6. So both those teams that Georgia beat, sitting just outside the top 4. Excuse me. Any takes on the latest rankings?
Yeah, I was surprised that TCU jumped as far as they did.
I was too.
But, I guess I think that there's still just a ton of power, at least in the eyes of man who are voting where there's a 0 in the loss column. I think when you just see that, it just triggers, it just helps to kind of, which I get it. They've won every game that they can so far. I think part of the reason we got the committee was to kind of maybe differentiate a one-loss team and an undefeated team that may be very similar. And, you could maybe add in some additional, maybe advanced stats or, honestly, just a Vegas line. Who would win between Tennessee and TCU on a neutral field? What does Vegas say? I know that we're, not necessarily in the business of that being the standalone win all, because obviously there's teams with 3 losses that could be favored, over, I don't know, the number 4 team in the country, because they are this week. But, I think
by a touchdown.
Exactly. So, but I think that's something you got to consider potentially as I don't know. I don't necessarily say a tiebreaker, but maybe it factors in the conversation. Maybe it did factor into the conversation, but they just believe it did not. But maybe that's something that they would look at. I just don't see it. I mean, Tennessee coming off their worst performance of the year, I still feel very strongly that, against a Big 12 team, the way the Big 12 plays, Tennessee will fit right in as far as that stuff goes, and they would be the best version of that.
Ari Wasserman on Andy Staples show, he talked about he got to do I'd love to do it one day, honestly. The simulated selection committee so that writers can see what the committee actually does. So they have all the data points. They do previous years and kind of to go through it that way. He asked Bill Hancock, the former chair, he said, hey, do you ever look at Vegas lines, like power ratings, point spreads? And Bill Hancock responded by calling him a degenerate. And I thought he said it best. He said power ratings, like all these advanced stats you're attempting to pull out, and it's weird the ones they pull out because they don't use the best ones available, like SP Plus. It's like power ratings take all this stuff you're trying to look at for advanced stats, and they put it all together and then give you a literal rating and tell you who should be favored against 2 on a neutral field. Like they do all the work for you. So my thing, it should be a data point. For example, Texas this week, and we're going to talk about this game, is favored by a touchdown over TCU. But Texas has 3 losses. So Texas should not be above TCU in the rankings. And this is where, the BCS still had a human element to it, but the people's complaint with the BCS is these computers aren't watching the games. I'm just telling you, there's no logic in having TCU 7 last week and having them 4 this week. Because if you watch the games, again, if I promise you, you put Georgia up against TCU, they're doing the same thing they just did to Tennessee. And so you're punishing Tennessee for having a tough schedule. In TCU, which they said last week they didn't like how they've gotten themselves in a hole in the first half of games. Well, what did they do on Saturday, Daniel? They found themselves in a 10-point hole against Texas Tech in the first half. So and then this week they credited them with not allowing many second half points. So it's all hilarious until the final week. Again, I hate the way we get there, but I do think we've gotten the Final Four right every year. So it's fun to talk about. It's fun to debate. I do think that debating who the best team is has always been a part of college football. And so the fact that we can still do that, I think it's a fun, unique part about college football. You got to think the national champion prior to like 2000 was just a bunch of people saying who's the best team. We didn't even have two teams play for it. So it's always been a part of college football. It's unique. It is fun to talk about. It can be annoying, but I like the end product.
Yeah, I agree.
Does LSU have a chance at the playoff, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if they went out, or do you think
Absolutely.
like they're for sure in, or do they need help?
If they went out, they're in.
Like no
I
matter
think
what,
that
like everyone else wins out.
the help that I would describe would be Georgia completing a 12-0 season. If Georgia had a loss, it might diminish the win for LSU. That would be the only help that I would say is potentially warranted. But no, I
See,
think LSU. Now you say, do they have a shot? I think they have a shot. They have a path. They have a path, but I think the LSU, my 10-2 LSU team up against Georgia, I just don't think that I think the lines of scrimmage will be an issue, and I think that they
well,
become,
I should have asked, do they control their own destiny? Because I don't think they do. In fact, I think Georgia getting a loss hurts them because,
that's what I'm saying.
sorry, I think Georgia getting a loss would help them because I think a 12-1 Georgia that they just beat would still box them out of a playoff. Like I don't think both teams. Like I think they would still box LSU out because you got to think you'd have an undefeated Ohio State or Michigan, a one-loss Ohio State or Michigan, an undefeated TCU, a one-loss Oregon, a one-loss Tennessee that beat LSU by 28. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think they control their own destiny. I think they need some help. Like I think there's a path. I don't think it's in their own hands.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I'm trying to think. I think that if they beat Georgia, I know they lost to Tennessee. So that's kind of their issue, but it's almost like you beat Georgia who beat Tennessee, but you beat Georgia who beat Oregon. So those are the kind of the additional qualifiers. You're also talking about the SEC champion. So it's tough.
It's
It's tough.
hard to imagine the SEC champion being left out, but we'll see. Here's the thing: it's college football. It's all going to work itself out. We've never had more than 3 teams who deserved to play for a championship, and I mean, at this point, right now, we've got 4. We've got 4 undefeated teams who can stake their claim and say we absolutely deserve a right to play for a championship, and 2 of them are going to play each other. So once again, we're not going to have more than 3 that can 100% stake their claim and say we deserve to be here. That's why 4 is a perfect number. It's too bad it's going away. But Daniel, we have a busy week 11 to talk about. We're going to talk about Georgia traveling to Mississippi State, TCU traveling to Texas, Washington going to Oregon, Alabama going to Ole Miss, UCF going to Tulane. It's a fun matchup. LSU going to Arkansas, North Carolina going to Wake Forest. Before we talk about those 7 games, Daniel, what's a game you're excited to watch that we're not talking about?
Not blindsided this week. I did prepare. I think the main thing is the main game that I'm looking at is one that was just left off our ticket for what we were picking this week, and that's Baylor, Kansas State. I think that one's a good matchup, a very like teams, similar teams. two teams that I think we're trying to still size up it to a certain extent. And I think are are either they're both still are they still alive for the Big 12 championship by like hanging by a thread? I know they're both 3-loss teams. So anyways, I hate to pull up a scenario on you like that
No,
that quick,
Kansas
but
State still is because one of their losses out of conference.
right.
I
Okay.
don't think that
The Baylor is
Baylor is. No. One of their
um
losses out of conference. Who did they lose to out of conference? The BYU?
be right.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. So they're
So they're
still
both still in
hanging
it.
in there.
There's
They're
three
hanging in there.
teams that have 2 losses in conference. So this is a huge game.
Yeah. So it's a semifinal qualifier. I don't know. But it's definitely a game that's going to shape the potential Big 12 picture down the stretch. So you're looking at maybe a team who matches up the best with the final teams in the Big 12. So that's always going to be interesting, to check
You have a
out.
pick on the game? Baylor's a 2.5 point favorite.
Yeah, I I've been leaning a lot of Baylor. I just it's tough because I think that both quarterbacks for Kansas State could do it. It's just a tough spot. I think if they would have been a little bit closer with Texas last week, it'd give me more confidence to hit the Kansas State button. I think Kansas State can win outright. Um, I'll stay with Kansas State. I think they can win.
Kansas State. So a little WTF game of the week. Wrong team favored.
You could go there. I wouldn't necessarily. The Big 12 it's still so tough to just predict. There's so many good teams.
I think Baylor's catching momentum. I would say, based on what we've seen so far this season, I would lean WTF game, but I'd have to dive some more into it. I will go. Oh crap! I had it earlier.
I did it to you.
Oh my God. I
I did
know.
it to you.
No. I had it pulled up earlier. Now I'm like no. Here it was. Sorry, I knew it was an ACC game. Clemson and Louisville. How does Clemson respond to a loss? Because I
A
don't
bad
think
loss.
Clemson's done losing. So the whole like,
Oh,
ooh, is if Clemson has one loss, are they for sure eliminated? I don't think it's gonna matter. I think they're gonna lose the second game. 7-7 to the point spread on that one at home.
that's tough. I mean, Louisville's been known to, you know,
They're playing well.
give you a bad day, and that would be a bad day.
So we'll see. Excited to watch that one, 3:30 on ESPN on Saturday. All right, Daniel, let's dive in. The new number one team in the country, the Georgia Bulldogs, coming off of that big win against Tennessee. A perfect letdown spot here, going on the road to Mississippi State. This spread is sitting at 16.5. Daniel, where are you going in Stark Vegas?
I like that spread. I think it's kind of right on the money where this game is going to be played. I do lean slightly over for Georgia or to cover. Um, I think they might not necessarily come out slow, but it's on the road. I think Georgia has been used to day games. The last night game they played was Missouri on the road. So I mean, for what it's worth, you got to kind of look at that maybe a slow start potential. When Kirby Smart was asked what time slot he likes, because a lot of the Georgia media was kind of pushing this story about the night game situation, how there hasn't been a night game in Athens this year. Kirby always thinking about recruiting, talked about the 3:30 window kind of being perfect because you get to, see the recruits beforehand, and then you get to spend time with them after the game. If it's a night game, you don't get to do that. And then he mentioned the night game also kind of throwing you off your schedule. He doesn't like it because you're hanging out a lot of the day. So I don't know if someone who's process oriented like Kirby, what if that's something that just kind of gets in the way having a night game. Now, that being said, still 11 versus 11 in this game. This defense is going to travel. I think that they're they played a couple years ago. At least these two teams matched up in 2020. And it was kind of surprising. Georgia could not run the ball on Mississippi State that day. That was JT Daniels' first game. They kind of had to live and die by what JT Daniels did in the air. I look for a different game this year. I think that Georgia's offensive line is much better than it was back then, specifically at running the ball. But they're number one in the country in pass block efficiency as well. So I look for Georgia to establish the run this go around in Mississippi, in Stark Vegas, and I believe that Georgia just comes out on top. Maybe it's a 10-point game at halftime. Maybe they haven't quite pulled away, and then the second half they just kind of lay the hammer down. Their depth shows, and the defense just kind of holds in. What Will Rogers, I almost said Will Healy, the coach for, was it Charlotte back in, anyways. Yeah, Will Rogers holds him kind of at bay. He might have a lot of yards, but I think they'll kind of play the red zone, kind of limit the points. So laying the points, give me Georgia. 3 scores seems right. I mean, I think a 17-point lay would be pretty easy.
Dangle, do you think that Georgia has the best defense in the SEC this year? It's not a trick question.
I mean,
probably right.
I'm trying to think if there's a way that could possibly be a trick question.
No.
And I kind of have a headache trying to think of a potential defense that would be. No. Yes, I do think that Georgia has the best defense in the SEC. Final answer.
I think some of the other top 5 defenses in the SEC would involve LSU, would involve Alabama. Still, I know, would involve Mississippi State. Would involve Kentucky. We're talking about Mississippi State, maybe Mississippi State, but all those teams held Mississippi State to 17 points or less. So I don't think they're going to eclipse 17 points against Georgia's defense. If that's the case, can Georgia get to 34 to cover the spread? I think so. My only worry with this game is Kirby Smart, man, he loves an excuse to just sit on a lead if he gets the chance. And we saw it this past weekend. It started raining, and Kirby said, that's all I needed, and threw 2 passes after that, after it started raining. So if there's any excuse for Kirby to just sit on a lead, especially while he's trying to get his team healthy before a playoff run, it's in this kind of game. So that's my only worry with Georgia not covering, honestly, is what does Kirby decide to do? Georgia is talented enough and good enough to cover in this game. This offense is good enough to get to 34 points. I don't think Mississippi State scores more than 17. So I think this is a bad matchup for Mississippi State. They're going to get manned up just like Georgia did to Tennessee, and we saw how well that worked. So I like Georgia to win. I like Georgia to cover. This is a perfect letdown spot. I just don't think this is the kind of team that's going to fall in this kind of letdown spot. So taking the Dogs. All right, let's move on to TCU, Texas. Man, this game, TCU undefeated, now a top 4 team in college football. Texas, what did they end up being ranked? I already closed it off. They're ranked.
18.
18. There we go. Texas, as a 6.5-point favorite at home against TCU. Is that line confusing? I mean, where are you going in Austin?
Yes, I think Texas wins the game. That's kind of where I've been this whole time. Now, do I think that they dominate and win by a touchdown? I don't know. I think that TCU has proven to have some juice, especially late in games, to where they can recover. I think, this might play out similarly to some of the recent games where, the opposition gets ahead of TCU, in this case, Texas. gets ahead, gets a lead on TCU, and TCU comes storming back. I'm going to take TCU plus the points, the 6.5 points. But I'm kind of threading a needle because I do believe Texas to win. I just don't think that they're going to cover a 7-point spread against this kind of offense who has proven that, they can come back from, behind and everything like that. I think it'll be too little too late, and their little, the Cinderella story of them being undefeated will come to an end in Austin. And I think that Texas is satisfied with just a win. So as far as that goes, I kind of wish it was a full 7, like a 7.5 or something like that, where I get a little bit of a kick. The fact that it is a touch under 7 at 6.5, that kind of gives me a little bit where I did go back and forth on this one, but I'm just going to stick with TCU with the points, Texas to win.
That's a good middle. That's fair. I went to look at where the money was, at least reported, as far as like what money's on who. Because last week, if you remember, especially early on in the week, Tennessee, similar point spread right there at 8.5. Tennessee was the like 97% of the money was on Tennessee. Daniel, I don't know if you heard this. And then Friday night, like the sharps waited until it got to 7.5, and then
Yep.
like millions came in on Georgia. So
I think there's a singular bet of like $370,000, something like that. So yeah.
I was curious if that was similar to this, but no, the money's 50-50 right now
Okay.
between TCU and Texas. Daniel, man, I am just going to stick with what I believe, and that is Texas with Quinn Ewers,
Do it.
I think is the best team in the Big 12. And do I think they can beat TCU by 7 at home? I do. It's going to be talked about plenty this week. In fact, it's probably already over talked about, but in case you haven't heard it, Gary Patterson, former coach of TCU, is on the sidelines at Texas. He knows this roster very well. I think that TCU has just played in too many close games. It reminds me of, honestly, Clemson this year, where it's like, look, a loss is coming. I don't think that diminishes what TCU has done to this point. I think credit to them for winning all of these close games, because we've seen plenty of coaches lose a lot of close games and they lose their job. So the fact that they're doing this in year one of a new head coach and Sonny Dykes is impressive. But I do think the streak comes to an end on Saturday. I like Texas to win. I'll take Texas, lay the 6.5, win by a touchdown. I think it's around that number. I think this is like a 38-31 kind of game, higher scoring. What's the over under at? It's at 65. So that's a really good over under. So I'm over that, I guess, in my score, but I think it's very close. So I'll take Texas to win. I like Texas to cover. I think their defense, Texas's defense, is obviously going to have to step up in a game like this. Texas's defense has really been challenged against the pass this year, and TCU's offense looked really good. It looks like Quentin Johnston's not going to play. So I think that plays into Texas's favor. I like Texas to win. I like Texas to cover. Game 3, Daniel. Oregon and Washington. This is now a ranked matchup. Oregon has looked like a different team since week 1. They come in with one loss, dominant win last week. Washington looked really good early. They've had a couple of losses since, but kind of got back on track last week against Oregon State. Oregon is 13.5-point favorites at home against Washington. Where are you going in Eugene?
Again, I'm interested in this line. I like that it's less than 2 touchdowns because it's going to put me on the Oregon side. I'm going to take Oregon. So Oregon is a very, very good team, and I think they're realizing what they've got, and I think everybody's kind of playing within the system. And Bo Nick's having a phenomenal year, and I think they're kind of realizing what they faced in week 1. Each week, they're like, okay, there's a lot more space to operate here. At least offensively, that's their thought, and their defense has not been stressed like it was in that first game, and I don't think that Washington is the type of team that's going to stress them in that way. I expect it to be close early, and I came into this week, knowing that, this game obviously was on the schedule, and thinking, is Washington up for it? Are they up for, this type of battle in Eugene? And I just don't think that they are. Um, I, 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 I didn't have any doubt that I thought Oregon was going to win the game. Do I think that Oregon's going to be dominant like they have been in all of these other games? And that really comes down to the defense. Do I think the defense is going to keep Washington in check? And I do. I just think the defense is going to keep them at bay. And, Oregon, as many opportunities as they're going to get, which I think there's going to be some turnovers. And so there's going to be some short fields. And so for me, that's cover town. They're going to be able to do it. So give me the Ducks, lay the 13.5. I don't really feel nervous about this one. So
Something that will play into your favor. Oregon top 25 in the country as far as field position goes. So they do a really good job of getting good field position for their offense, as well as putting their opponents in bad field position. So that net field position, they're top 25 in the country. Really good job at Oregon. So I'm with you, Daniel, in that I think these are two quality offenses, and then two not so great defenses. Only difference being Oregon's offense is better than Washington's, and Oregon's defense is better than Washington's. So I think this is a higher scoring game. I do think Oregon's going to give up more points than they have the past several weeks. So I could see Oregon giving up 28 points, but man, I think Oregon's getting in the 40s. Bo Nix is playing the best football of his career by far. This is the number one rush offense in the country as far as on an EPA per play basis. Number one in the country, top 4 pass offense in the country. They're number one at creating opportunistic drives, so getting themselves in a position to score. And then points per drive, once they cross the 40, top 5 in the country. So this is an extremely efficient offense. And that also includes a game where they only scored 3 points against Georgia. So I like Oregon. They're on a death march to the Pac-12 championship. I think they continue that run. They've got a few difficult games here at the end of their schedule, but I like that it's a hook under the 14. So I like Oregon to win. I like Oregon to cover. All right, game number 4. Let's go to Ole Miss and Alabama. Ole Miss does not quite control its own destiny in the West, but it does only have one conference loss to LSU. Alabama comes in just getting their second conference loss, so they are out of SEC West contention. LSU would have to lose 2 games, but if they lose this one, I mean, nail in the coffin. But they're on the road against Ole Miss. Alabama 11.5 point favorites. Where are you going in the Grove?
Yeah, this one, I think with Ole Miss, obviously they only need the one loss from LSU. If they do finish everything, win out, I don't think that, they're focused on that. I think they are focused on Alabama. I like, everything Lane Kiffin does. Pretty much, you just put me in his fan club. He tweeted out a picture today of the book of Nick Saban's Secret to Success, or whatever the book is that John Talty wrote. He tweeted out a picture of that alongside, his play sheet, and it's essentially him just like studying up for the game this week, which, I mean, just a phenomenal tweet. But he, in these matchups, he's definitely, just gone all in on a win, and I think that that's going to hurt him in the cover. I think that Alabama is the better. It just feels icky saying it, because I just don't trust Alabama right now. Oh man, this one I have not been 100% certain on. I want to take these points with Ole Miss because I'm like, it, go ahead and just run and hide and take these points. They're at home, but I just have some sort of, feeling like Alabama's going to come out focused. But I guess the one time they've done it this year was against Mississippi State, after their previous loss. So Nick Saban off of a loss. Do I trust that, or am I going to, do I lean in and say, Ole Miss plays game of their life. I don't think Alabama loses 2 games in a row. So let me start by saying Alabama wins this game. The decision is Ole Miss in it late, and I think they are. I'm gonna have Alabama cover though. I think that by the end of the game, 2 touchdowns. That's not crazy. It's an 11.5 point spread. Yeah, give me the Tide on the road. Lay the points.
I can't believe you backed off of it. I'm not afraid of 11.5 points. No, take them. Take them. Alabama's the last 2 seasons. Here's their road games. Florida, 2-point win. Texas A&M, 3-point loss. Mississippi State last year beat them by 40. Let's see here. Sorry. Auburn, 2-point win in overtime this season. Texas, 1-point loss. 1-point win. Arkansas pulled away late. Tennessee loss. LSU loss. No, Alabama's like 2-7 against the spread in their last road games against FBS opponents. So no way am I laying 11.5 points with Alabama. I know they're the better team. I know what the power ratings say. I know where they still sit, even on our extra point rankings, still sitting right there at 5. I get it. I'm just not trusting this team on the road. This is not the Alabama we're used to. Something's wrong. So
something's definitely wrong.
Until they prove me otherwise, I don't think they're going to lose the game, but I'm not going to lay 11.5 points. So yeah, give me Ole Miss. I know that Saban loves to beat up on Kiffin. I know it would kill him to lose to Kiffin, so they're not going to lose. I also think Kiffin's going to take this game more seriously than he took it last year. With not that he didn't take it seriously, but he's not going to do the whole, get your popcorn ready that he did last year. So I like Alabama to win. I will take Ole Miss to cover, though. All right, game number 5. This is a fun one. Shout out to College Game Day for going to some fun locations this year, including to New Orleans to see Tulane take on UCF. Both teams ranked. Tulane, a 1.5 point favorite, pretty much a pick 'em at home. Where are you going in New Orleans?
I wish we could see the uniform selection for Tulane as to what I'd like to do, because if they wear those light blues, I mean, I'm hitting the button. But I don't think that they've announced it yet. I think it's like a Thursday announcement as far as what they're gonna do. This is a great game. I wish we knew more on. John Reese Plumlee was able to play. I think he's probably out again. But UCF getting out a win last week was, just against Memphis. That was a great win for them. I think that, I really want, to pick UCF in this game, but I think Tulane at home, and like I said, if they sneak out in those blue uniforms, it's over. So at least those helmets, goodness, it's a good look. But yeah, give me Tulane. It's basically a pick 'em with it being a game and a half, or a point and a half, excuse me. At home, I like Tulane to win it. They've played well all year, and UCF may not be at full strength. So I'll take Tulane, lay the 1.5.
You're giving up on your Knights, man. I'm going to say something that's going to disappoint you.
Do it.
UCF. Well, timeout. I think they're fine without JRP. Mikey Keene went 15 of 21 in the game against Cincy. He was 22 of 28 last week with 3 touchdowns. Like, he is the better passer of the 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and shout out to UCF for changing their offense to better fit his skill set the last 2 weeks to get these wins.
Right.
I think they carry some of that momentum. You ride the hot hand. If JRP is not fully healthy, don't play him. Like, ride your hot hand, and that's Mikey Keene. I think UCF goes on the road, and I think they beat Tulane. And what this does is it puts UCF in the driver's seat to get that New Year's Six bowl bid. Puts them also in the driver's seat to go to the AAC championship game. This could end up being a rematch in the American Conference Championship. So I like UCF to go on the road and win, but I'm with you. If Tulane comes out in those baby blues, it's game over.
All bets are off.
They,
Yep.
they better not. I'll take UCF to win straight up. I'll take them to cover. All right, man. You're 10-2 LSU Tigers going on the road to face Arkansas, playing for the boot. I mean, do I even need to ask what your pick is or how you're feeling in Fayetteville?
You already know. This team's on a mission. LSU, I think they'll win. It's tough because I do think Arkansas, while they don't, the outside might look in and say they don't have a lot to play for because of how the season has gone thus far. Sam Pittman has done a phenomenal job of motivating that team, even when there might be, some some of their goals at the beginning of the year may not be attainable anymore. One of the things he always says, he wants to make the people of Arkansas proud. And I think that nothing will make them more proud than to ruin LSU's season right after they beat Alabama, for them to, for Arkansas to take care of LSU, win the boot. This rivalry used to be the one that they played on Black Friday before Texas A&M and Missouri joined the conference. They started moving some things around.
Rip.
I miss it being on Black Friday because I kind of like that matchup a little bit better than Missouri and Arkansas, and then obviously A&M and LSU. This one I think is because regional, just a little bit of a. I guess everything's regional, but anyways, I like the way this game was played. I guess I'm also thinking back to like Darren McFadden in 7 overtimes beating LSU, and then LSU still going on to win the national championship that year with 2 losses. So I am going LSU again. It is a principal play for the sheer fact that they got to go 10-2 to prove me right. I said it back in May. I'm going to keep saying it, but I do think Brian Kelly has won his team over, which is very important. I guess if I'm going to give, a specific matchup that I'm kind of keying in on, it's that Arkansas secondary versus the receivers of LSU and this passing attack. I think LSU's balanced on offense. The running with the quarterback, I think, that's going to cause enough trouble for contain purposes, and then there'll be one-on-one receivers, and Jaden Daniels has proven that he can find them, especially this second half of the season where he's really kind of developed within this offense. So, yeah, give me the Tigers, lay 3.5.
It's the best fight song in college football. LSU is on a mission right now. And I really do think their defense has changed since like playing Harold Perkins, the way they've been able to play him. He's such a dynamic linebacker. He's one of these players that even as a true freshman, you're already like, he's played like 3 games and you're like, okay, top 5 pick. Just like, you're like, all right, I've seen enough. He's so athletic. The way they played him, spying Bryce Young, was brilliant against Alabama. This is a team on a mission. That being said, in this rivalry, I think 3.5 is too many points. I was going to say I'm going to take Arkansas to win. I just don't. I hate to say like one player is going to make that big of a difference, but I keep thinking about how do you stop a dynamic quarterback like KJ Jefferson? You just put 40 on him. And so I think that makes a big difference in this game. So I am going to take Arkansas plus the points. I think Arkansas can win this game. Again, I do think that Sam Pittman does a unique job of like getting his players bought in, regardless of like what what the season's looking like. I think there's some players in that roster that are still playing for individual draft stock as well. I think this will be a close game. This is also a perfect letdown spot for LSU after taking control of the SEC West, beating Alabama in overtime. Excuse me. So I'll take Arkansas on the points, but I do like LSU to win. And man, it puts them in a good spot if they get past Arkansas to go 10-2. So man, if this comes true, man, all the credit. I mean, I still don't know where it came from, but all
Pulled it out of my hat. That's all it was.
All right, man. Last game. Let's go to the ACC. If there's a game that I think you need to watch this weekend, I think it's Wake Forest in North Carolina. Do you like offense? You're going to love this football game. North Carolina is a 3.5-point road underdog against Wake Forest at home. Daniel, where are you going in Winston-Salem?
This one delivered last year on the offense and of the entertainment factor. It's like looking at this line. Am I looking at it correctly that Wake Forest is a 3.5-point favorite? I'm on Team Drake May. I'm taking the 3.5 points that you're giving me. I think North Carolina wins this game outright. I think they're on the ascend, and they are going to play in Charlotte. They're going to be the representative for the Coastal, and I think that's going to, not that this is a interdivision matchup, but I think that they're going to take care of Wake, and I think it will be exciting. I think it'll be close, but I mean, UNC's getting points, and I think they're going to win outright. So this is kind of a no-brainer from, that aspect. Give me the points. We'll see where this goes.
Daniel, you started with, I'm looking at this line, and you know what you were thinking? You were thinking WTF game of the week. It's Wake Forest, North Carolina.
I didn't want to say it. It's your thing.
The wrong team is favored. North Carolina should be favored in this game. I think they win. I think they win close, but they should be favored. Here's the thing, Daniel. It's very simple logic. In a game in which two defenses don't exist and two offenses are very good, you got to pick the best quarterback, which is Drake May. He's not turned the ball over near as much as Sam Hartman has, especially recently. He's in a slump. 2, how's this gone? Well, the past 2 seasons, they played in shootouts, and North Carolina had the better offense and won both games. 59-53 was 2020. 58-55 was last year. So I'll take North Carolina to win 52-49 in Winston-Salem. And I hope it is that high scoring because that would be awesome. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah. Take the over, whatever it is.
I'm curious. I was looking it up.
That would be one that's like
Dude,
it's approaching 90.
It's at 77.5.
I think that's an easy over. I think that's a layup over.
The thing is, the computers can't contemplate both teams scoring that high.
Oh, yeah.
that's like a 38-38 kind of game. Or they're saying like a 41, what is it, 40-37 kind of game, I guess, with the point spread. Yeah, I also like the over in that one. There's more money on the under. I don't get it, but yeah, I like North Carolina to win. I like them to cover. Drake May could very well win the Heisman. He should be squarely in that conversation. So I'll take the better quarterback. And I don't know, Wake might have a better defense this year. Last year, North Carolina had a better defense, but there's not going to be a lot of defense, period, in this game.
Yeah. Any defense would honestly, like any failed possession, that's how good I think that both offenses are. Any failed possession turns into like a big story. It's like, people talk about holding serve in tennis, but like, when you have the advantage, you got to put them away. So I think that's
right.
exactly what's going to happen here.
Love it. Be sure to follow us on social media and on YouTube at the Extra Point Pod. So you can find us there in both places. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob.